I'll be simple in this debate. I'll first explain to you how Walmart and 7-Eleven maintain their businesses in places like USA. First, what they do initially, they work in two steps, right? First, for produce that they can sell within USA, they manage to farm it themselves, and they make deals with local farmers and local business dealers, give them the ability to harvest and produce products, and they sell those internally made products within their own nations. The other thing that Walmart and Tesco and all these companies do is they buy their produce and their products from developing nations like Bangladesh that happen to sell garments at cheap prices and happen to sell other produce like fish at cheap prices, and they sell those back in the markets of USA and UK. Now, assuming that those are the two ways that Walmart and 7-Eleven work, we'll tell you how both of them can't necessarily work in Bangladesh, in countries like Bangladesh and India. First, Bangladesh and India already have strong roots of farmers markets and existing local markets that tend to be quite powerful in terms of sales and in terms of revenue collected. Right? Why? Because these products are farmed internally. These products are farmed and sold by the same group of people, and they work together in a symbiotic manner. Unless Walmart can make that symbiotic relationship happen between them and these farmers, we tell you that it's not possible for them to survive in our nation. Why? Assuming that Walmart now comes here and tries to say you sell free-range chicken at 120 taka a piece. We tell you that farmers markets all over Bangladesh already sell them at 100 taka a piece. The only way Walmart can sell them is if they buy it from those farmers and then sell them at a higher price, thus maintaining profit. Assuming that Walmart is now going to go predatory pricing on these people and start selling them at cheaper prices at 80 taka a piece, we'll tell you farmers are willing to live with that because Walmart can't entirely sustain that loss for such a long period of time. But more importantly, because it's easier for farmers to just fight back in terms of predatory pricing. Fine, if Walmart sells at 80, so do the farmers. We'll tell you ultimately, however, that while it's easier for the farmers to do this, someone who only has to harvest and then sell it off once, it's still more difficult for Walmart and 7-Eleven to continue unless they find a way to farm it themselves within our countries, right? Within the host countries. Which means what? They'll have to come in and they'll have to develop infrastructure, employ local people to look after the farms, buy tractors and harvesters for these farmlands and cultivate these produce themselves and start selling them at their markets. Assuming that they do this, we tell you this not only employs more people into different sectors, but this also industrializes the agriculture sector of developing nations to begin with. What happens then is that you allow industries like food production and garments to gain a certain level of momentum so that they can continue to grow. And we'll tell you this, given that Walmart and these companies are in foreign MNCs, there are particular laws that already prevent them from exploiting us to an extent where it starts hurting. They are expected to train us in a certain way. They are expected to give us a certain level of taxes. And no, it's not entirely true that the companies bully us into giving them very low corporate taxes. We put taxes on them based on how much they're benefiting our people. But more importantly, these employees will also get a minimum wage governed by our nation, right? Which means decent level of payment. So ultimately, employment is a benefit. And assuming that Walmart comes in and blocks out other supermarkets, which we'll prove to you is unlikely, or blocks out other means of retail stores, we'll prove to you unlikely. We still say even if those industries die out, these people can continue to farm and sell to Walmart and 7-Eleven and still continue to maintain their employment. Now, to move on so we'll tell you why. Because those people in local retail stores and in local farmers markets are also the people who produce these products themselves. Often it is true that the farmer the fisherman that catches the fish in Bangladesh, then in some corner of the Padda River, comes to Dhaka City himself and sells these products back to the people. But more importantly, they also sell these products to the other supermarkets. which means supermarkets will often tend to operate in the very same way that Walmart does. Again, but the difference is it's easier for these supermarkets to do so because no level of extra taxes are placed on them. We'll also tell you, which also means they have a certain level of fair competition. And even assuming that Walmart manages to dominate market products because they can sustain losses for longer, we tell you that that's not true. They can't sustain losses for very long because we've seen Walmarts closing down in Hungary. We've seen Walmarts closing down all over the world, one by one, because they're not an infinite pool of money, right? So ultimately, Walmart will have to give back to our community in order to survive and continue to sell at cheaper prices. But more importantly, Walmart will have to produce employment in terms of hiring local workers to help in hiring local workers and salesmen into their shops. And assuming that they want to farm and cultivate within our lands so that they can sell at cheap prices, they're going to have to employ farmers from our places, lease out our lands, and so on and so forth. We tell you ultimately, in many ways, this tends to benefit these countries, right? More importantly, while Srijan and Adi freak out about how these major companies are going to take away our money and thus making it impossible for us, making it more difficult for us to keep the money within our economy, which is that that's not always true. If a foreign company is coming here and paying our employees, and if a foreign company is coming here and giving us a certain level of money, we tell you that we benefit from that as well. And assuming that they have to spend at least 5 to 6 years fighting off other supermarkets within our own nation, we tell you we are within that time. If they're doing predatory pricing, we're going to be earning a significant amount more than these people are going to be profiting. We tell you furthermore that down the line, these people will never be a monopoly. Why? Because even if we assume that supermarkets like Agora and so far are gone, there's a huge chunk of farmers markets and local retail stores that have existed and stood the test of time within these nations. Why? Because these are often farmers themselves and families of the farmers who believe that it's better for them to catch the product and cultivate themselves and specialize in one particular product and sell them at the local kacha bazaars, as they call them here, right? Which is basically farmers markets. Which means what? Not only is Walmart going to have to compete with local superstores like Meena Bazaar and Agora and Big Bazaar, they're also going to be competing with the Mumbai Haat and the local Karan Bazaar as well. Something that's entirely difficult, something that in fact local superstores themselves haven't been able to do, even with sustaining losses and predatory pricing. Even they haven't been able to shift market shares in their favor. We tell you that it's even more difficult when you're a foreign entity within a country because, let's face it, you're having to pay a lot more to exist in the country to begin with, and more importantly, you're having to work in the same level as these other supermarkets as well, because ultimately you're selling our products back to us. But more importantly and finally, we tell you that certain products have certain fixed prices set by the government, and mostly this happens in terms of food and particular agricultural crops that they can never sell at any cheaper prices. For example, rice in Bangladesh can never be sold below 40 taka piece, which means predatory pricing is not always available to these markets to begin with. Ultimately, we've shown you that there are certain major benefits that happen when these foreign entities come into our countries, and this is why we think that it's not entirely a good idea to bar them from entry from the countries to begin with. Thank you very much.